Today's podcast, 5 things you may not know about the bad girls of crime and New York cops under siege. And how do female cops handle stress compared to male cops? This and much more right here on today's Charlie Crimebuster. Well, good day and welcome once again to the Charlie Crimebuster Show. We're delighted to have you with us today. Thank you for joining a host of others who are our regular listeners. By the way, if you have not yet subscribed, I hope you'll take time to subscribe. Go to our website. Check us out there. We have all the Charlie shows there for your enjoyment. And when you get a chance, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, follow us if at all possible. We would be delighted to have you to join an already growing family. Well, today we're going to talk about the bad women of crime. The bad women of crime. We're going to talk about 5 things that you may not know about the bad women of crime. And we're also going to talk about a very serious situation in New York City that happened over the weekend, this past week. New York cops under siege, a public relations nightmare. We're going to be talking about all of that right here on today's Charlie Crimebuster. But now let's talk about the bad girls. Well, we've all heard the song Bad Boys, but did you know that the cops not only go after the bad boys, they also go after the bad girls? And on today's program, we're going to share with you 5 things that you may not know about the bad women of crime. Hey, by the way, who do you think the most famous bad woman is out there? Who is the one that would be number one if you were to look at all of history? Who is the number one bad girl of crime? Have you guessed it yet? Well, if you were to ask someone, they'll probably tell you who the most famous, or maybe I should say infamous was. You'd probably hear this name more often than any others. I bet you already guessed it, didn't you? You're right, Bonnie Parker. Bonnie Parker, who was half of the infamous Bonnie and Clyde duo. Bonnie Parker, she was a member of the Barrow Gang, if you remember. And that gang shot its way through numerous thefts, bank robberies, back in 1934 when they met their end. Now, according to a lot of people in history, they'll tell you that there is actually, now get this, and this is the number one thing that you may not know about the bad girls' crime. That number one thing is this. There is actually no proof that Bonnie ever shot a person during the Bonnie and Clyde crime spree. Rather, it was her good looks that drove all the media to all of the notoriety that those folks got. But nevertheless, Bonnie met her end when a posse of Texas and Louisiana police officers ambushed their automobile and shot them. Hey, an interesting side note. When her former husband learned of her death, and by the way, her former husband was in prison then, but when he learned of her death, he said these words. He said, I'm glad she went out like she did. He went on to say, it is much, much better than being caught. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Bonnie Parker, the most infamous, according to research, probably did not kill one single person. It was the known media that made her famous, and by chance infamous, known as ever as Bonnie and Clyde. Now, hey, speaking of bad girls, well, here is 2 bad girls that got into it with the police. You see, it seems that they hopped on a plane, flew clear across the United States, and went on not a shopping spree, but a crime spree. This comes to us from San Mateo there in California. CBS SF tells us about this. San Mateo police, well, they released body cam video of an officer-involved shooting back in September that injured two women who were suspected in a series of retail thefts across the Bay Area and Southern California. According to San Mateo Police Chief Susan Mannheimer, she says they targeted Apple stores. And we have seen these grab and runs through Apple stores, especially during the last few months. Well, the incident in question began on September the 28th, and it was around 5:19 p.m. Officers there spotted a suspicious vehicle in a parking lot there at the Hilldale Shopping Center. Now, the Chevrolet Malibu was unoccupied, but the engine was running, and it was parked. It was parked in a handicapped stall without any markings that it should have been parked there. And the license plate, well, they belonged to a Honda, not a Malibu, but to a Honda out of Anaheim. So when the two women emerged and drove away, then officers began a pursuit. And during this pursuit, the suspects were seen throwing credit cards out the window all along 31st Avenue. That's what police tells us. Now, after hitting a parked car on the 400 block of East Hillsdale Boulevard, well, the chase ended at a cul-de-sac. And you can see it on the body cams released by the San Mateo Police. An officer opens up fire at the car, that car which was cornered and moving toward other officers. After firing off a number of rounds, the car then backs up toward the officer who opened fire, and the same officer is seen firing another series of shots. Now, according to Chief Mannheimer, the officer shot at the vehicle while he was fearing for his own life. Both the women were struck by bullets. Officers rendered first aid at the scene, and then the women were taken to a trauma center. Now, the extent of their injuries is not revealed, but the San Mateo Police Susan Mannheimer, she says this: both were recovering, and no officers were injured. These women, who flew clear across the United States, they were identified as Raykita James, 30, of Newark, Delaware, and Talia Johnson, of 27, of Philadelphia. Police said they flew to Los Angeles from Philadelphia 2 days before the incident. And then over the next 48 hours, they committed a series of retail thefts and other crimes in at least 11 locations in Southern California and the Bay Area, including San Jose. Now, if you'd like to see video, real video from the body camera of the actual shooting, let me encourage you to go to Facebook/CharlieCrimeBuster, Facebook/CharlieCrimeBuster. There in the newsfeed, you'll find the actual body camera video. But I'm going to have to caution you, it may be graphic and may not be suitable for small children. I have a question for you. Are women criminals more active, or is it just that we have more media to report such incidents? Let me ask that again. Are women criminals, are the bad girls of crime, are they more active, or is it just that we have more media spotlight on it? Well, according to Wikipedia, while a vast majority of these crimes are still committed by men, there is, now this is what it tells us in the article, there is an increased report in crime by women. That's the second thing. More is being reported, and there has been information submitted to say that women crime is increasing. In fact, they tell us from 2003 to 2012. From 2003 to 2012, there was a decrease in the rate of crime overall. But, now get this, while there was a decrease in the rate of crime overall, there was an increase of crimes committed by women, and it started all the way back there in 2003. You see, there was an increased arrest rate for women of 2.9%, but a decrease in the arrest rate of men of 12.7%. Increased 2.9% of women, decreased 12.7% in men. And the article goes on to tell us that this would demonstrate an increase in arrests for women. Now, the arrest rates for women, well, they had a sizable increase in the following crimes. Here's what the bad girls of crime did. They increased robbery, 20.2%. They increased larceny theft, 29.6%. And arson, property crime, 24.7%. So, From the women flying to a new state to commit a crime spree, then planning to fly back as if they were on some sort of vacation, we see that these women can certainly be creative. Creative in a bad way. And that comes to their next story. And the next story involves a whole gang of women. A whole gang of women. And they were using, now get this, these women flew across the United States in a jet plane. Well, these other women, this gang of women, they used a taxi as their mode of transportation. And the driver, he became their victim. This comes to us from CBS in New York. It seems police are searching for a whole group of women accused of attacking a cab driver in Brooklyn. It happened back this last month on the 23rd, October the 23rd, around 4:30 p.m. A 47-year-old cab driver was dropping 5 women off on Atlantic Avenue there near Brooklyn Avenue. That's when they allegedly threw an unknown chemical substance in the cab driver's eyes, and then they robbed him of $200 cash before taking off on foot. Now the victim, he was rushed to the Interfaith Medical Center, and he's in stable condition, And the police, they have released 5 photos of the 5 women who are wanted for questioning. All 5 of this women's gang are believed to be in their 20s. And anyone who were to recognize the individual, or anybody who has information regarding this incident, this crime, they're asked to call NYPD's Crime Stoppers, the Crime Stopper hotline, at 1-800-577-8477. That is 1-800-577-8477. And if you were to call in Spanish, call 1-888-577-4782. And according to the article, tips can also be sent to the NYPD Tips Twitter account. You can submit it online at nypdcrimestoppers.com. That's nypdcrimestoppers.com. Pictures of these women, by the way, are posted on Charlie's Facebook page. Take a look, and while you're there, take time to like the page. Oh, you can just Google Charlie Crimebuster Facebook, and you're going to see us right away. Now, in New York last week, we saw a police department that was under siege. This police department that found itself under siege, well, they were looking at a public relations nightmare. And this nightmare left officers wondering while they have our backs in protecting us from bad men and women, let me ask you, just who has their backs? That's what they're thinking. You see, cob-hating and disrespect was heaped upon New York's finest, and we get this from the New York Post. According to the story, only two people have been busted in connection with the chaotic, cop-hating protests that rocked downtown Brooklyn, as New York's finest kept a low profile Saturday and elsewhere through the borough, where an angry mob treated them like trash. Now, despite the official vows of additional resources in wake of this disgraceful treatment, well, cops and their cruisers received in Brownsville on Halloween night uniformed officers near the dumping ground, East 95th Street and Clarkson Avenue. Well, they were kind of hard to spot. You see, cops are hesitant. They're second-guessing themselves. That's what Associational President Ed Mullins told the Post. These anti-police protests are growing, and cops don't want to engage. They don't want to engage because, according to Ed Mullins, they fear that if it goes bad, well, then the NYPD is not going to back them. Now, this terrible crowd threw trash, boxes, eggs at patrol cars. Then they taunted the arriving cops. They said, "Trick or treat, mother effers." No arrest has been made in connection with that vandalism by that evening time. Now, this holiday hell-raising, which led one police source to rage, "The inmates are running the asylum." Well, it was followed up Friday night by 1,000 cop-scorning protesters rampaging downtown Brooklyn. These protesters carried signs reading, "F the police," and NYPD KKK. Now, according to Lou Turco, the president of the Benevolent Association, he told the Post, "It doesn't surprise me that some of the community have some hatred toward us." He, along with Mullins and Pat Lynch, who was the associational president, they were unanimous in blaming the surge of hate, in large part on the Mayor de Blasio, and other politicians and community leaders for their failure to condemn the anti-cop riots. These are the people who are driving public safety policy in our city. They are those who our elected officers are pandering to at the expense of safe streets. They go on to say these politicians, their goal isn't justice. They want violence against police officers and the end of all law enforcement. He goes on to say, Lynch does, "It's time for our elected officers to support the police the way honest working people from the neighborhoods do." He cries out, "Please stop pandering to the criminal element." You see, they're being silent on this. Turco, he agreed. He said, "I don't hear nothing," he said, of civic and community leaders. Now, Mullins and Lynch, they additionally blamed the silence of the NYPD brass. And my friend, hear me now. There is much more at stake than just bad press and poor morale. You see, cops on the street, they're dreading what will come next if the anger continues to escalate unstopped. The fear, Mullins said, is that cops are going to end up injured, or worse. Mullins says, "I see it coming, and we all see it. I see the violence toward police officers getting worse. I see it getting to the point where another police officer is going to be killed, just like Ramos and Lou. I see it coming." You see, Mullins was reference of crazed cop haters 2014 point-blank shooting of NYPD officers Lou and Ramos as they sat side by side in a marked patrol car in New York. He goes on to say, "The same feeling is in the air as when this tragic ambush of two great cops took place." You see, my friend, it is our belief at the Charlie Crimebuster Show that everybody should hear these words from these cops, and police everywhere could use a little support right now. And today, since we're talking about female criminals, let's not forget to show our support to female cops. Think with me about this. Now, the life expectancy of an average American is 77 years of age. But if this person is a law enforcement officer, his life expectancy drops to 59 years of age. Why? Well, many people say it's because of the stress. Law enforcement can expect all kinds of personal, emotional, and physical issues to come upon them over the course of their careers. You see, officers, they wear multiple hats. They're constantly juggling between serving the public, enforcing the law, being a good partner, a parent, and a friend. They have a great responsibility to the health and safety of both the people they love and to complete strangers. And today they're expected to handle mental health situations on the street. And that's without the training of a mental health specialist. Even officers who are mentally prepared and experienced, they still suffer from stress. There are a multitude of layers of this stress, the degree of threat and using judgment to shoot or not shoot, and then, of course, how the media treats that situation. There's court appearances, the negative attitudes toward police from a large society, and the lack of agencies who really show support. It's no wonder that heart disease and other health concerns become a part of a cop's life. But what about the difference between a male and a female? What about the difference in the stress that they face? You see, statistically, female officers can be at risk of even additional stressors. They are more likely to experience disapproval from their people in their circle, their family, their friends, and the public. While it may not come from a negative angle, you see, the concern that women aren't able to handle the work, well, that's enough. Having to prove themselves to male officers and showing that they can deal with the emotional and physical part of the job, well, that becomes a real issue because they're human too. You see, female officers have all the stress that male officers have, plus many others that male officers will never experience. You see, the assumption regarding lady cops, well, there's all kinds of baggage with that. Sexual harassment is still very real in law enforcement, but it's often forgiven for the feeling of just being one of the boys. People tell us that more often than not, it is male officers observing the abuse heaped on females that take more offense to it than the victim herself. So, ladies and gentlemen, here at Charlie Crimebuster, our hat is off to the brave women of law enforcement. And on today's show, on our website, we have resources for cops. It's called our resource page. Stress is real. And just as you as a good cop would not hesitate to call for backup, knowing that this is the way to keep you and others safe, then please do not hesitate to ask for help in facing the stress that you face in law enforcement. Go to our site, and there you'll find a hotline to put you in touch with a whole army of professionals to help you navigate the stress of a cop, male or female. Go to charliecrimebuster.com. Go to the resource page. We have help for cops there. Just like a cop who calls for backup, there is backup available for you. All right, hold on, folks. You're at the right place. That wasn't some interruption in your podcast. That was the song "Crazy," because now it's time for our crazy crook story. We try to use a crazy crook story on every podcast, and as you can guess, we had to find a crazy crook female for today's story, and didn't have to look very far. Nope, not at all. A woman in North Carolina. She called the sheriff's department. She said she was stranded without gas and food. But there was one big problem. You see, the car that she was in, it wasn't hers. That's what police say. You see, once deputies arrived, to their astonishment, Cheryl Webb was in a vehicle that had been reported stolen in the Elk Park area just the night before. Webb, 25, of Elk Park, she was arrested over the weekend and charged with felony possession of a stolen vehicle. That was according to the sheriff's department. And also there was a guy, Logan Winiger, 29, of Newland. He was also in the car, and he was arrested as well. So, my friend, just maybe if you steal a car, you should not call the cops to help you. Now, I recall that when I was a patrol officer, I don't have a dumb crook story, but in a similar incident, as a North Carolina story, we too were called to assist a motorist, this being a female. She was having car trouble, was stalled along the side of the road. As we were assessing the situation, with the key on, we noticed that the fuel gauge registered empty. So you can imagine my partner and my own amazement when we said, "Ma'am, we have good news for you. Your problem is not a repair problem. You're simply out of fuel." And then, so help me, she asked, "Well, will it hurt it to drive it that way?" Oh, no. Only in America, my friend. Well, back to our feature story. 5 things you may not know about women criminals. Number 1, Bonnie Parker in all probability did not kill anyone. Number 2, female crime is increasing. And number three, women serial killers. Women serial killers, for the most part, kill differently. Now, this comes from the paper Killer Instincts. It goes on to say, men serial killers tend to follow their victims, often going from town to town. That's what research shows. They wait for the perfect time to attack, like a predator, hunting for their prey. They will often butcher their victims, much like the hunted game, and keep trophies from all of their crime. While men largely attack strangers, previous studies shows that about 80% of women serial killers know their victims. You see, they gather them around. Although while a man's hunting is essentially literal, the researcher says that women's gathering is more figurative. They also take care of others. You see, 72% killed at least one person in their care, and nearly, get this, half of all of them had killed their children. This 2015 paper showed that 39% of female serial killers worked in the healthcare. They largely stayed in one place, like women in prehistoric societies, according to the researchers, and used methods less outwardly violent, like poison. There's a fourth thing that we want to tell you about women and the bad girls of crime. They tell us that technology is a contributing factor in the increase of the bad girls of crime. You see, technological progress and the social norms, they've kind of freed women from the home, increasing their participation in both the labor and the crime market. You see, with crime no longer just men's business, it's important for us to look at female criminal behavior and determine all of these things that we might do to curb crime. You see, over the last 80 years in the United States, the labor force participation by women has been increasing almost continuously, doubling from 22% in 1930 all the way to 45% in 2009. And with that comes opportunity. Yes, opportunity. Opportunity to advance up the corporate ladder, or opportunity, unfortunately, to descend down to the gutter and the glitter of the crime world. And number 5, the fifth thing you may not know. You may not know about the bad women of crime. That is that murder-suicide is one of these areas that's increasing women crime. This comes from us from WTRK-TV. A Texas mom, newly divorced, kills her 3 young children and herself. A mother and her 3 young children, who were all discovered dead inside their Texas home, appeared to have perished from a murder-suicide. That's what authorities say. The Harris County Medical Examiner announced this last Thursday, that Ashley Ozine, 39, appears to have shot and killed her 3 children, ages 7, 9, and 11, before turning the gun on herself. Police made this gruesome discovery Tuesday after a relative asked authorities to check up on the family. Court records show that Ashley and Mervyn Ozine Jr. had just finalized the divorce last week. Police said a gun was found inside the family's home in Deer Park. That's about 20 miles east of Houston. Now, while it is true that men commit the most murder-suicide, we're reading continually of women who are following suit. We need to realize, ladies and gentlemen, that murder-suicide is very real. For instance, in June in 2007, a professional wrestler strangled his wife, suffocated his 7-year-old son, and then hanged himself. On January the 18th, an aunt was taking her niece and nephew to her house for a weekend stay, and while en route, she pulled over, took off her clothes and those of her niece and nephew, and carried the children into oncoming traffic. All 3 were killed. On that same day in New Jersey, an executive vice president of a bankrupt mortgage company broke his wife's neck and then killed himself by jumping off of a bridge. On February 14th, a former student walked into a crowded auditorium at the Northern Illinois University back in 2008, shot 21 people, killing 6 of them before he shot and killed himself. Here we have a professional athlete, an aunt or aunt, an executive vice president, and a student all committing murder-suicide. My friend, that's why we at Charlie Crimebuster urge on each podcast the need to be alert to your surroundings. We use the term situational awareness. By the way, I consider that term to be the golden rule of protecting yourself and others. So if you're going through a divorce, like the previously mentioned woman in Texas who killed her precious children alone with herself, if you're experiencing domestic violence, if there's a financial downfall, even if someone in your life is experiencing depression, I'm telling you, just as there are physical bearings to cause you to be more alert, the time of the day, late at night, early in the morning, or the area that you're in, just as there are physical stressors to pay attention to, you need also to pay attention to emotional and mental stressors that could send someone to murder-suicide. And when it comes to our loved ones, stop sticking your head in the sand. Stop being afraid of making someone mad at you. Would you rather they be mad at you for caring, or be dead and you silent, along with others who may be loved ones in your life? To help you with situational awareness, go to our website, download some of the best safety apps of 2019. It's right there on the resource tab. Look for opportunities to help you to be more alert. Be alert to what's going on around you and what's going on in the life of your loved ones. And so, Until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert. For the life you save, it really well may be your very own.